Thanks so much, everyone. You're welcome to this edition of our expert series. And on today's video, we are having one of our experts in the data industry. She's a data consultant working with data culture as a senior analytics engineer. She's helped a lot of clients make the most out of their data and their businesses. And today, she's going to join us to give us a lot of insights in data and business, especially the e-commerce space, on how businesses could get the most out of their data. So, are you a business owner or a data professional? I'm sure you can get a thing or two out of this video. So, right now, I'm going to pass the mic over to Samantha to introduce herself, tell us about her career and data journey, and then we'll go into the questions. Yeah. So, Sam, over to you.
Great. Thanks, David. Thank you for having me. So, yes, as David introduced, I'm Samantha, a senior analytics engineer at a data consultancy called Data Culture. I've been working in the data space for about like 3 years now, and in that really like kind of short time, have gained a lot of experience working with a lot of different clients across the various different industries, e-commerce being a really big one for us. I really enjoy working in the data space, particularly when it comes to solving problems and like talking through data with people. And, there's a lot of different ways data can be interpreted. It can spark a lot of different conversation. So that's one part of why I got into data. And then just like being a consultant and seeing these problems kind of surface over and over again has been very exciting to try and help businesses solve those problems and like educate people around data is something that I've been like grown and been passionate about.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sam. It's really exciting to have you on this channel, sharing your thoughts and experiences along these lines. So talking about helping businesses solve problems with data, just curious from your experience with several businesses, how would you rate organizations' data literacy over the years? Would you say that businesses have become more data literate, especially with the whole buzz around data analytics helping businesses, data would help you make profits or reduce your costs and stuff like that. Would you say realistically businesses are now becoming more data literate? Businesses are now beginning to value the import of data and helping their businesses grow? Like how's the experiences been for you generally? Like your own opinion on what you see.
Yeah, definitely. I think over time, what I've seen is that there's just been a really big growing interest in data. I think more and more people are really excited to use data and try and integrate it into their day-to-day lives. And then what they do is they come to us with a lot of questions around like how they can do that. And so I think very slowly, like that excitement and like want for data literacy has definitely grown over time. And I think too, as like people are just like getting better at it. They might not have all the answers because maybe they haven't like worked with the data team yet, so they're still like learning or they haven't really like done a lot of exploration on their own to figure out how. But I think slowly but surely, like people are becoming more data literate as they like add data to their companies and try to use data to answer a lot of business questions. So I've definitely seen it kind of grow over time, I would say.
Sweet, sweet. Thanks so much, Sam. So apparently, I would say the world is in that place where they're able to make the most out of the data resource. As lots of data is growing in the world, industries, businesses from different data points, social media, different data points from the business, right? It's important that businesses understand and become more literate along these lines so they can get the most out of data. So I'd like to ask, could you share an example of how data has transformed the business you've worked with or you've observed or you've worked for, right? Could you just share that example?
Yeah, definitely. So this happens often, like I would say like as an example, I'll even share it across like multiple different companies and like what they have in common. And so typically what we'll do is we'll start working with clients and we'll ask a lot of questions about their business, really trying to understand how they operate, what questions they're trying to answer, how do they work, how do they like to analyze data, what are some of the common problems that they experience on a day-to-day when it comes to like working with data, speaking about metrics with different stakeholders across the business. And after we kind of like ingest and interpret that information, we'll build tech stacks. Depending on what the client needs, it might vary from like the full tech stack or maybe just like a BI layer. Um, and then once that kind of tech stack is in place, we'll have like dashboards built out that are based on those like initial auditing findings that we had and what metrics the client's interested in, how they want to cross view that data and what different kind of segmentation they want to do with that data. And I think then that most important part is that like education around it. and helping them understand like the new tools that they have in place, what metrics exist, and like how to go about interpreting those metrics to make business insight. And that's really where you start to see that kind of transition point of how data is helping transform companies and like their day to day. So being able to provide a lot more data accuracy. So we'll get a lot of clients where they come in and, they will talk about how they clash with other teams because, the metrics that they're talking about, they're not defined in the same way. So they're, not necessarily speaking the same language, or we might discover that this like underlying software that they've implemented maybe was like producing inaccurate data or wasn't necessarily like there were little bugs that were producing inaccurate data. And so like they weren't necessarily actioning on accurate data. And so that's where you start to see that like transformation. We're providing a little bit more accurate data. People are spending less time doing that data wrangling. And, as a finance person or a marketing person, you can actually spend more time analyzing the data and like actioning that data. And so really saving time for different stakeholders, and just like creating that centralization and accessibility to data. Because oftentimes, maybe only one person has access to the dashboard or the data, but a lot of the work that we do is really trying to make that data more accessible to more teams. And broader teams. And so that's definitely some of the ways that I've seen and helped different customers and just like people in general transform data within their business.
Sweet, sweet. Thank you so much, Sam. You mentioned something about tech stack. So I'm going to imagine that there are some business folks who really don't know so much about what you mean by tech stack, and also people in data or technology who really may not understand what that means. Maybe you could, in a very simple way, just break that down by what you mean by tech stack for the business and how that would help them get the most out of data.
Yes. So from a tech stack, what I mean are the different components, like think of them as puzzle pieces that will come together to help automate some of the data that you might see on the end. So like if you're using a dashboard, there's a lot of components that happen before like you get to that kind of dashboard. And so that's that tech stack. And it's all just kind of like the moving pieces to present data to you.
Sweet, sweet. Thanks so much, Sam. So if we narrow down this conversation towards e-commerce, we can see or Amazon by Jeff Bezos was founded in 1994, and that was really around the time where there was the internet buzz and e-commerce really was a thing. So just a general question: do you think right now in 2024 to 2025, do you think e-commerce is still a thing? Do you think e-commerce businesses are still viable right now in the space? Why do I ask that question? So, if e-commerce are still valuable or are still a good form of business model in the world right now, what are some critical data types or data types that e-commerce businesses could understand that would help them make the most out of their business?
Yeah, definitely. I think e-commerce is still relevant. I think especially as like technology becomes more prevalent in our day-to-day lives, I think more people are gravitating towards like online shopping. I would say maybe not so much for like food yet. Like I think people are still more inclined to like go into a grocery store, see that in person. But I think definitely when it comes to like buying toys and like buying clothing, I think a lot of people do tend to gravitate towards e-commerce. So definitely I would say not going anywhere yet. Could be wrong, but we'll always see how that kind of plays out over time and how technology like will shape that. Um, and in terms of like trying to think about the types of data that are like that should be focused on from e-commerce companies, I think a lot of it really comes from like when you might be first starting, thinking about like acquisition and customer growth and like how you might get customers. But I think even more importantly, is that retention and repeat rate type of data, like any data that'll help you understand how to get your customers to come back. Because I think you can acquire as many customers as you'd like, but I think it doesn't necessarily mean as much unless they're coming back and retaining. And that's really like where you'll see the growth happen. Um, and I think from there, it's like any data that really allows you to understand your customer base and your products and like what products people are interested in and what kinds of customers are interested in purchasing your product. I think all of those things and focusing on those things will really help like your e-commerce business grow and really help with like profitability and things like that.
Oh, sweet, sweet. Thank you so much, Sam. And just to add, for retention and acquisition, so we know that it's more expensive to acquire customers than to keep them. So if you can have them come back every month, maybe like a subscription-based business or something, it's much more easier than having to get new customers coming all the time. And I think one of the organizations I worked with, and we had that problem where we had to acquire almost every paying customer. So we had to almost tweak the model of the business such a way that we had some form of subscriptions because it was expensive to get every customer to come in and purchase the product. So that makes sense for e-commerce businesses to understand retention and acquisition as well. Um, for smaller e-commerce businesses, would you say these businesses they would have to get to an Amazon level before they start utilizing data, or even while they're so small, they could still benefit from data? And if they can, how should they go about that?
Yeah, definitely. You definitely don't have to wait to be, the Amazons of the world, the Netflixes of the world to start utilizing data. A huge part of like what we do as consultants at Data Culture is working with those smaller businesses because it's all about building the foundation and you can build that foundation early on. And I would argue that it's definitely easier to do that because at that point there's maybe like less data, less processes. It'll be a lot easier to build something early on in place that has like solid core that you can build off of and grow off of. And so when you are smaller, it's like, how do you start? There's a lot of different avenues you can take. Like, do you have to, build in AI from the very beginning, or can you start even smaller? And I would say that you can start even smaller. As a company, that's on the smaller side, you might want to first start with maybe choosing like three of the most like important metrics to the company. So, three of the most burning questions that you have, um, metrics that might have a strong impact on growth or profitability. So that might be, conversion rates, AOV, CACs, AOV being average order value and CAC being customer acquisition cost. And then the other, like, so then after you've kind of figured out what those metrics are and what you want them to be, you might want to work with some free to affordable tooling. Like there's a lot that's out there today. Google Analytics is a great web analytics tool. It's free. It has the ability to help you understand, website traffic, user flows. It'll do built-in reporting for you, or you can build your own custom reports as well. If you're a Shopify-based e-commerce company, there's pre-built analytics integrated in Shopify as well. That's like really easy to use. And an old faithful, I would say, is Excel. You could download your data typed or your data reports, and then from there build out, visualizations as you need. I think oftentimes as data people, we like to like knock on Excel a little bit, but that's what people are comfortable with. That's what business users are comfortable with. So, let's foster what they know and you can still use data that way. So it's a great way to start when you're small. You can also start to think very early on about segmentation of your customers, whether that be like demographic or whether that be around like purchasing behavior or like which traffic sources your customers are coming from. And so that way early on, you can start tailoring marketing experiences. You can start thinking about your product offerings and like what direction you want to go in. Um, and if you're on the slightly bigger side, like smaller to medium, let's say medium size, you might want to consider working with freelancers or marketing or agencies, because they'll have the expertise and they'll be able to help you with like what you don't necessarily know and like what you could be focusing on. Also working through like prioritization of like how you might want to go about solving these problems while also having that like long-term scale in mind, I think is like a great way for businesses to like start working and start working and getting the most out of their data.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much. That's really insightful. You made a statement about focusing on three important metrics or question, but then there is a deeper question to that. How do businesses even know what the right question to ask is? So can they have pointers to tell them that, oh, even not just for the business, you're also the analyst as well. The analyst will be trying to get these fancy toolings to do stuff and maybe missing the metric that means the most to the business. You're trying to see how you want to track revenue, but then there are other metrics that are driving revenue. So you may not even know what those metrics are. So can businesses or analysts get a pointer to help you identify oh, these are what are the critical metrics to look out for this business. You're trying to increase revenue or to reduce costs. What are the things driving revenue? What are the things driving costs? Are there pointers that can help businesses or data professionals to identify what these important metrics are or what these questions are so they can actually focus on answering those questions or focus on those metrics? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So funnily, I gave a talk on this not too long back, early in the year. And one of the things that is like a great place to start, I think, with technology today, we have AI. I would say ChatGPT, right? Like if you're an e-commerce company, you can go into ChatGPT and give them a little bit of a description about the industry, what your role is at the company, what your goals are for the company. And you can ask, hey, like as an e-commerce company, what are some of the most important metrics to like look into that like will have the most impact or that could potentially have the most impact on, growth, profitability. Why did you pick those metrics? What are some benchmarks that I could think about for those metrics and like what strategies might I want to like use to like influence those metrics and how would I dive deeper from there? You can ask like that next level question of like, where do I go from this metric? Like, what's the next step? And I think really trying to leverage ChatGPT, you can get some like pretty insightful answers, I think sometimes when doing those searches. And I think that's like a really great summarized place to start when you're trying to figure out, where do I start? What is the kind of right metric? And then from there, I think over time, as you like build that data literacy, we talked a little bit about it. But as you like build that and that intuition, then you start to ask more questions. You stay curious and you can kind of start on your own diving deeper. And then you can really see like what is driving profitability. And as you ask those questions, you might uncover things that maybe you hadn't uncovered before.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sam. We believe right now that AI is not taking over our jobs as it were, or it's going to give you more leverage, right? Give you more resources to help you do your job better. So you can leverage that to as a way of starting to just find out what to do and what to start. And now speaking about data literacy, business people they tend to believe their guts because they've been there, they've seen it all, they know it all. uh, how can businesses be more literate, be more data literate rather? How can businesses become more data literate? And sometimes the top guys in the business are usually data literate, but then how do they pass this culture downstream towards other users in the organization so that everybody becomes data literate, everybody begins to value data in their day-to-day activities and not just make decisions out of their intuitions or God's guess and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I definitely think it starts with like having an interest and like being excited about data. And then from there, it's all about that education and like really trying to figure out why it matters. And you might do that by reading articles. Like I read a lot of Medium articles. You could go to different conferences. There's a lot of different data conferences out there, and a lot of them are free as well. So not necessarily having to be a cost to you to like go to these conferences. If you have a data team at hand already, you might want to work with alongside them to like really understand a little bit more about the data that they're building and like what are some of the nuances that go into that data and like how they're getting to the kind of end output of like the dashboard that you could be consuming. And then if you're like on the data side, it could be, working with your business leaders and your team to understand what it is that they're doing on a day to day, to understand the process and how that influences like the back end that you're working on. Um, but as I mentioned, I think a lot of it is like staying curious. And then from there, especially as like a leader at the company, if you're maybe data literate already, it's like, how do you spread that? And it really starts by being that champion of data. If you're excited, it's like getting your teams excited and slowly encouraging them more and more to like look at dashboards. And I think most importantly, it's like when you are trying to like pass that intuition along, it's more than just and reminding like your team members, it's more than just looking at like the number and it's more than just like having that collection of data, but really stopping to think about the interpretation of that data. Maybe as a leader, you can do lunch and learns. Like that's always a great way to like teach people and pass that knowledge along. It's also a great way to like get accessibility and like make sure that everyone has that access to data and like the dashboards and whatever it is that they need to make those like insights and decisions that might have a strategic impact on the business. And then from there, you can start like fostering that like data culture. And so, yeah, I would say like a lot of that is just around, I think most importantly, staying curious and then just finding ways to like keep educated and pass that information along to someone else, whether that's like in a casual conversation or a lunch and learn or however works best for the people who are consuming the data.
Thank you so much, Sam. Yeah, just as you said, learn and then share your learnings, right? And that's what we're doing here. We're learning and also sharing our learnings with you. So you have learnings as well. You can share with us in the comment section, share your thoughts. Let's just share, and then the more we share, the more we learn. I feel like one of the benefits of this dispensation we are right now in the world, especially due to technology, is democratization of knowledge. So everyone really has access to all forms of knowledge. I could stay in my house here and then take a Harvard course for free. Right? So knowledge is everywhere. So you can just learn and then share your learnings as well. Thank you so much, Sam. I'd like to ask one of the important areas about e-commerce businesses or businesses generally is that they have to serve customers. And serving customers involves customers' experiences and loyalty. A lot of businesses want to see that they are moving from just giving customer service to customer experiences. I think while I was still in the bank, at some points, our customer service officers we now begin to train them how to offer to see their jobs beyond service to giving the customer an experience. And so, from when the customer comes into the branch, the security men at the door, the first point of contact, the kind of service, all encompasses in the customer's experience with that brand. Now, how can businesses and e-commerce businesses in particular how can they use data to improve customers' experiences and loyalty? Because again, that takes us back to retention. So if your customer has a good experience with you, he becomes loyal, you retain him, like he's not a repeat customer. But if he has a bad experience, he doesn't come back, right? Interesting. I just remembered a service I subscribed to, and after the first month, like I canceled it never again because the experience was really, really terrible. And another interesting thing about this particular business, is that these guys they keep on calling me almost every month. And like, don't you guys like have any idea like what has happened? Like, like they just let me talk about them. But then how can businesses use data to improve their customer experiences, see what's happening, see when there's a negative experience and how they can because they've lost out of them. Like nothing can take me back to that service at all. Right. So how can businesses really use data for this purpose? Yes, Sam. Over to you.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's an important question because I've heard like experiences very similar to yours where it's like, all right, I've canceled, or maybe you want to go in for an intro, but you haven't gone in yet, and then you're just getting phone call after phone call after phone call at like terrible times, and it's like, why am I getting phone calls? Or you've already converted and like you're still getting like these same advertisements, and as a consumer, that becomes like very frustrating and it's just like you kind of question a little bit like what's their like marketing strategy. And so I think like in terms of being able to improve that customer experience, it becomes very important to really like tailor, like using your data to tailor that a little bit more. Like you might want to look at, like, for example, you could look at your like retention curve and understand like where the drop off points are and like something like that might help you understand like at what point in the funnel you might want to contact a customer about like coming back and retaining without necessarily like calling them over and over and over again. Um, and it's really important to like know when you want to send your emails and like what content you might want to include. And a lot of that might come from like demographic data and marketing data. Because at the end of the day, you know, we see so many ads. We're in such an ad-driven world, I think, and it's you might only get seconds of someone's time, and you really just want to make sure of like how do you take that time that you do have and make it meaningful? And like you said, it's about the customer experience, and like it starts from the moment they first see your ad. You know, it starts from that awareness that of like your brand even existing in the first place. And so really just using your data to understand when you want to target someone, how you want to target someone. And if someone like does fall off, you know, maybe they cancel, they don't want to come back. It's I think being respectful too of like that kind of like turning away and like not wanting to come back. And if you do retarget, like becoming strategic about like when you want to go back rather than like, I just canceled a month ago. Why are you calling me like month over month over month? And so, yeah, I think it's definitely just around how can you be more meaningful in knowing like when and how to talk to people. And a lot of that will probably come from demographic data for sure.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sam. One of the areas around customer experiences, especially for e-businesses, is personalization. Not just e-businesses as well, like physical businesses, personalization. And we believe that data plays a huge role in this personalization for businesses. Could you share some light around how much of a role data plays in ensuring that businesses can give their customers a much more personalized service?
Yeah, I think if you have customers that like spend more like or like the influence of having the data and like tailoring data to the experience, like if you think about maybe like when you first see an ad on like Instagram, for example, like you might dabble into the idea of like wanting to like go to that company and like convert, and then maybe your like friends are seeing those ads too, and then like you guys are starting to talk about it, and like together you're like, oh, like maybe we should like do this thing and like convert. And I think like those types of experiences and like how like data is like being tailored to you and like and your friends, and like when it's like strategically placed, I think really does play an influence in like how you might like convert to something. I mean, yeah, I've done that for like gym like subscriptions
Yeah.
and whatnot. So it does play a huge role. And it's really important in terms of like the when and the how. Yeah.
Oh, sweet, sweet, sweet. Thank you so much, Sam. One question I'd like to ask, is really around return on investment on data initiatives. I think previous places I've worked in the bank, startups, I see a pattern, especially in huge organizations. They really find it difficult to measure the return on investment on data initiatives. A lot of these businesses, they want to, or they're hesitant to invest because they're not sure what to get out of it. Compared to a role like sales, right? You can instantly measure what you're bringing out from sales. Are you hitting the numbers? Yes or no? You are hitting it. It's straight up. It's very obvious. But then for data initiatives, sometimes they're not very obvious. And that may be another reason why businesses may be hesitant to invest in data initiatives, right? So, what are some ways or what are some return on investment that businesses can see, or how can they measure that ROI on their data initiatives to say that, oh, our investment in data initiatives in getting our stack set or in hiring a team to be help us and make most of data, how can they measure those successes out of those initiatives?
Yeah, so if there's like data already in place and like there are tech stacks and things already in place, I think one cool thing that a data team could do to kind of measure that ROI is build like a cost savings dashboard. And so having something that just like helps you understand like what the cost is throughout the stack. And then as a data team, if you take the initiative to like optimize around like pipelines or cut costs on like certain tools, then you have something that's like super tangible to like show like, hey, well, we're saving the company like XYZ on kind of some of these like unnecessary like costs, and optimizing pipelines and performance. Like you can measure the performance and like how much faster and people are spending on like dashboards instead of waiting for things to load. Things load faster because they've optimized like reporting and things like that. I think other ways too are in the little things. I definitely a little bit harder to measure, but if you know for sure that like the marketing team spends, 8 hours a week trying to wrangle data, that's like a clear way to measure like time saved. If you're building a dashboard that's dedicated to the marketing team, they don't have to do anything but analyze the data now. That's like a really great way to kind of measure ROI from a data initiative of like building out dashboards. I think very similarly when it comes to like data accuracy, it can be harder to measure for sure, but if you find, in meetings before, like you were spending a lot of time talking through like, well, this number is this and this number is that, and how did you get there? But instead, you're now spending more of your times in meetings talking about, well, okay, this is our sales number, and what are the strategies that we want to take to try and improve that? Like that's a great measurement of like, oh, like, the accuracy is improved, and we can spend more time talking about like the insight and the action versus like the, I guess, like incorrect, not necessarily incorrectness, but like the miscommunication on like what something means. And similarly, like if the goal was to make data easily accessible, then like if only one person was using the dashboard before, now everyone's using the dashboard and everyone's able to create insights and share business value and add business value. Like that's a great way to show like, hey, like this data initiative, like it's helped change the company in all of these ways. Um, but yes, I think to your point, like sometimes it's really about the tangible thing, it's about the revenue. Um, and sometimes you could build like KPI dashboards too. If you know what the goals are and what the like revenue numbers are, then you can like build those dashboards, and that's a great way to like help your teams understand quicker and more directly like how they're meeting or exceeding targets and like make changes, pivotal changes that way. That's like one element to it.
Sweet, sweet. Thanks so much, Sam. And it's also for businesses to also, just to add to what you've said, that businesses should realize that data teams are more of enabling teams. They enable the businesses. It is said that what you don't measure, you can't improve. So we help you measure, right? So you can improve. But basically, we're just enabling you ensure that your business is moving to where you want it to go to. Just a final question I would ask Sam. It's really been an insightful conversation, really, if you ask me. Thanks so much for sharing some of your thoughts and insights. Last question I'm going to ask is really around data trends in the general data ecosystem. So you look backwards and then you look forward. So what are your thoughts? Like just your own opinion. Where do you see data industry moving towards in the next 4 or 5 years? This year we had so much, for 2024, we had so much of AI just springing up so fast, very fast. What do you expect to see, or what do you hope to see, or what do you think we will see in the next couple of years in data
Yeah,
space?
definitely. So I think AI is always like a hot topic that's around. I think before even like getting to that like AI, there's still a lot of like groundwork that has to happen. So, AI is like the top of the pyramid almost as we like to call it. And what is kind of before that is all that like foundational work that we talked about. And some of that does come from a lot of the things we talked about today, from like data literacy and understanding metrics and data accuracy. And so I think that'll be like the one thing of like everyone who wants to start using AI will start to see more people like trying to become data literate and like trying to build those foundations to get to that like AI point. And I think the other thing will definitely be around like self-serve and trying to like enable like business users and stakeholders to answer their own questions. Um, and really trying to potentially like integrate more like input and Excel-like features into BI. I think, as I talked about, a lot of business users are comfortable in Excel. That's what they like. And so, if that's what they're excited about, like let's try to give them that so that their experience as, there's the like customer experience, but then there's also like the business user experience. Like their experience with data is just as positive. And I think that'll allow for a lot of other things like that are really cool, like real-time feedback or like making it easier to do predictions and like predictive analytics because with more like input and Excel-like features, what you enable is like if you're in a meeting and you're in a forecast meeting and you're trying to understand if you're going to like meet or beat targets in the end, you can directly like input in your BI like, hey, I think this is going to happen or I think this won't happen. And you can like in real time see how that plays out on your dashboard. And I think those types of features will be something that people start to gravitate towards. I think like Sigma as like Sigma computing as a BI tool is one that has definitely started with like trying to create that like table-like features and like input like features. You see tools like Omni also trying to like build Excel like features into their product. And I think Hex also even has like started to try and add these like table views and like Excel like features. So I think it'll definitely be something that like continues over time. And so it'll be really cool to see how that plays out. And I think that'll also help with like businesses trying to be more self-serve, which I think is good because then it saves the data team time to do other initiatives like optimization, for example. You don't always get that time to clean up your tech debt if you have to help businesses answer questions. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Sweet, sweet, sweet. Thanks so much, Sam. Generally, we see a future where everybody would be able to go into the data themselves and self-serve themselves. And this would be much more possible when the products have features that they're familiar with and they're used to, like Excel spreadsheet, like you mentioned. Yeah, really insightful. And thanks so much, Sam. It's really been an insightful conversation. I don't know if you have any like final word or final thoughts for the viewers who are listening.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say if you're excited about data, like, bring it to the table. Definitely don't hesitate. I think just try. It's always important to have that like champion and you don't have to be an Amazon, as we talked about, you don't have to be the Amazon of the world to start using data. So if it's something you're interested in, start small and see where it can go, see what you can do with it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. See where you can go, but just start. Start. There's no lead time. Better late than never. So just get going. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you got a thing or two out of this conversation with Sam. I'm gonna drop her LinkedIn profile in the link below so you can connect with her on LinkedIn. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe button as well. And share your thoughts in the comment section as well. Till we meet again in the next video. Thanks for watching and thank you so much, Sam. All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye.